Bangladesh's government has banned the opposition Jamaat al-Islami party, as well as the party's student wing and other associated groups. The ruling party blames them for inciting violence during recent student protests. Bangladesh has arrested more than 10,000 people in 2 weeks as part of a crackdown on dissent after weeks of deadly protests. The rallies ended in a police crackdown and the deaths of at least 200 people.
They are determined to seek justice. It's the teachers and the students who are speaking up for those killed in what they say was one of the most brutal state crackdowns in recent years. Despite the fear of arrests and violence, they are unafraid to ask for accountability.
I don't know where to seek justice, and we don't know who is going to give us shelter, where the police were meant to support us with their protection. They have shot the students several times, and this is completely unacceptable.
As internet restrictions have loosened, videos that show police brutality have shocked many. Weeks ago, the student demonstrations against government job quotas started largely peacefully. But rights groups say the state used unlawful force in an effort to quell the protests. Some 200 people, mostly students and young people, have been killed. Tens of thousands of people who are suspected of attending the protests or express their anger at the government are being rounded up. The UN has asked for a transparent investigation of these accusations.
The Secretary General is concerned about reported mass arrests of thousands of young people. He is also alarmed by emerging reports about the excessive use of force by security forces and credible evidence of human rights violation.
The Bangladeshi government blames the opposition parties of inciting violence. In a recent move, it has banned one party, the Jamaat-e-Islami and its associated groups, calling them, quote, militant and terrorist organizations.
We can sense an invasion of a third party who got into it and started attacking the government establishment. Many of the government and the public properties, they started attacking and also killing.
But this offers no consolation to many who hold the government responsible for the violence on its own people. For them, their anger and defiance is not dying down till they get justice.
All right, let's pick up this story now with Naomi Hussain. She's a professor of development studies at the University of London. Professor, it's good to have you with us. The Bangladeshi people are seeking justice. Will they get justice?
Well, thank you so much for following this story. There's no signs yet of that justice coming. The government doesn't seem to want to back down or to apologize or to hold anyone accountable for what's happened. I think they seem to be doubling down, in fact, on their argument that this is the opposition has incited this or even undertaken the violence. So, no, I don't think right now there's any sign of justice.
Can you give us a bigger picture of why you think these protests have turned so violent?
I think you said it in your intro, in fact, and I think we know this from protests all around the world. This is something I study all around the world, not just in Bangladesh. We know that, on the whole, peaceful protests tend to get violent when state forces come in and get heavy-handed, tear gas and, in this case, rifle pellets and other shoot-to-kill orders. This is really what triggered the violence. But before the state forces started using, arms on people, the ruling party's militia, the Bangladesh Chhatra League, started beating up students in and around the campuses before the police came in. So there's multiple layers of violence against the student protesters, and that's really what triggered the violence, as far as we can see. I should say, information is a bit limited still, and that's partly, in fact, largely to do with the government closing down the internet, preventing independent journalism or human rights defenders on the ground.
The government is blaming third parties for inciting this violence. It's gone ahead with banning one of the political parties. In your opinion, does it have credible evidence that the opposition parties were behind any of this violence?
I mean, again, we know from protests all around the world when they get really violent, when they escalate, often it is opposition parties getting involved. But actually, we have not seen any evidence yet that that's the case in Bangladesh. The Minister for Information put out a list of assertions earlier today that he claims shows that the BNP and the Jamaat Islami, the opposition parties, were involved. But actually, there has been no evidence. We've not really seen anything at all. They arrested, of the people who've been arrested so far, something like 13% of the arrestees have some kind of affiliation with a party that is not the Awami League. But that's a pretty small number, and it doesn't say anything about any kind of concerted effort or any kind of organized program by the opposition parties to get involved with these protests. And there are good reasons why. I could just tell you what those are. One is that they're quite weak. The opposition parties mostly are in jail. The leader is Begum Khaleda Zia is very sick. She's under house arrest. They're pretty much a broken party anyway.
Yep.
And another reason is, the Awami League was doing so well at destroying their own legitimacy and their own rule. Why would they get involved?
Let me ask you this. There have been all of these arrests, and yet the government has released the leaders of the protest movement yesterday. I mean, briefly, if you can, are there signs that the government wants to de-escalate tensions here?
I mean, I think there's no doubt that they would like things to calm down and go away, but they don't also want to take responsibility for what has happened. I think they do want to de-escalate. The tone of their communications has been very, very much softer in the last couple of days than it was earlier on, a week ago or so. But as I say, they're not willing to relinquish power. They're not willing to hold anyone accountable. They're not willing to really apologize or fire any of the ministers or other officials who are in charge of this. So it's a weak effort.
Professor Naomi Hussain with the University of London. Professor, we appreciate your time and your analysis today. Thank you.
Thank you.